The new DLC introduced a lot of new mechanics, including the bleed of the Liao Dao. It's a type of damage over time effect that bypasses armor. We'll use bleed and damage over time interchangeably. So let's see how this mechanic works in episode 4 of How to Mod It. Hello, today we'll be looking at modding the new bleed mechanic and how to apply it to various units. So let's get started. So I'm inside Genie Editor, inside the unit tab, and what better way to start than to check the poster child of this ability, which is the Liao Dao. So I'm already at the bottom of the section. So you have the unit section. We'll scroll down all the way. And what we do, especially when we mod, it's always useful to copy or at least look at how a unit works for the best way of finding out something new is modded or works. So the Liao Dao here has two things we need to look at that will activate the bleed ability on it. So right here we have the task section at the bottom, this whole window right here. There is different one that are common to a lot of units, but there's a different one for the Liao Dao, which is task 157. It is unused, unnamed, or whatever. It hasn't been named, which happens sometime, but it works. Trust me on that. So 157, as you can see, there's a lot of them. And there's a second thing we need to look at, and it's the break off combat ability here, also known inside the game as combat ability. So you need the combat ability 128 in this section, break off combat, to activate the task 157. And that is how you activate the bleed. Pretty simple on paper. So how does the bleed work exactly? Because you see there is many tasks at end here, and as we scroll down or click down and up, you see the only thing that changes is the class. So every task is assigned to a different class, meaning that when our unit, the Liao Dao, hopefully I pronounced that right, when it hits this particular class, it will apply the bleed. And this is done because we want, at least inside the base game, the ability was used to only damage unit. So as you can see, like King, Scout, and Cannoneer, Cavalry, like Infantry, Civilian, all of those except Building. Building is not in there. So it works on everything except Building. I believe Siege Weapon as well is also not there. So this is something that we can mod easily then. If we wanted to just add something, let's say we can just copy it, paste it, and we wanted to add another class in here. We'll just scroll down and add one as needed, like Siege Weapon, there, bam. And this is why I prefer to call it damage over time instead of bleed, although both works, is that if you decide to use it on Siege Weapon or Building, it is more of a damage over time than bleed. Anyhow, this is pretty simple of how to make the ability work. So compatibility 128, task 157, and then now you're wondering how is the damage applied? Pretty simply with the work value 1 and the work value 3. The work value 1 is the damage per minute being applied. So 180 divided by 60 will be 3. And then that means that the damage dealt is 3 damage per second. And it is applied for how long? For 3 seconds, which is work value 2. So this is your value 1 is your total damage per minute. The game translated in damage per second. And then work value 2 will be the amount of tick. So it's a 3 tick. So 1, 2, 3, it's done. And then this is for every class that will have this bleed or damage over time applied. So pretty simple. And if you're wondering why it's negative, it's because the game doesn't have proper damage over time coded into it. So how they made it work is by putting a negative value to a regeneration ability. So let's say like the Georgian scouts, right? Georgian cavalry, they regen HP. But if you put a negative value to that, they lose HP, which is the bleed. And that's why you have the search wait time 109 here. Search wait time, kind of the weird name yet again. There's a lot of those. But the 109 is the regeneration ability. So that way they are activating the regeneration ability and putting this minus right in front, right? And it does the bleed damage because it's a negative regeneration. So that's how, just to explain quickly how the game engine works for this. So what we want to do now is mod it to some unit. So what we'll do is we'll copy this. I won't copy the last one. I don't really care about siege weapon right now. So we'll copy this, and let's say we'll take the champion. Why not? And we'll add it here, paste it, and now we have the champion that has this task 157 that activate the bleed. But we also need, like I said earlier, combat ability 120 need to be activated. Pretty easy, just put it in there, and that's it. If we want to change a value for whatever reason, so let's say here I want, let's say infantry, and we'll go with minus 600. So that'd be 10 damage per second. Sorry, this one, 600 to infantry, so divided by 60, 10, 3 times. So over 3 seconds, it'll take 30 damage. And what about cavalry as well? You know what? For the hell of it, we'll show how the regeneration ability works in the game. So we'll put a positive value for cavalry just for fun. So, and we'll be testing out on an infantry unit. And that's how it works. Simple as that. And we can test on a building as well. Why not? So let's just copy one, paste it, and add. Let's see, find building, class tray. We'll go with minus 600 again. Easy. And there we go. We'll see if the damage work on the building for the bleed / damage over time. And finally, it also worked on range unit. So, oops. We'll go with the Rattan Archer. I believe I need to. I don't have it copied. So let's just get here real quick. Copy all of those. Go with the Rattan. Is there 2T? There is. Bam, add, paste, bam, everything was added. Our Rattan Archer will also do the same amount of damage. We need to have the break off combat ability at 128. Simple as that. So everything is set up per unit. And now we can find it a bit tedious to use that for every unit, which is true. So if you wanted to create an effect or a technology to add it to a lot of unit at once or a class of unit, I just showed an example right here. So just have an effect linked to a technology, of course, or whatnot, and its attribute 63, which is actually properly named here, combat ability, which is the same thing as the break of combat here. So you can just, so here as you can see, like it's not active in the game, but I just for an example, class 12 cavalry, they would get combat ability 128, and if they have the task 157, they would gain the bleed ability. So that's how it works. And now I believe that's all I wanted to show. Let's check in game. Actually, one last change. Because why not? Because I've showed the damage increase here. But for the Rattan, let's just change it real quick. Let's go with this. That means that all that damage on an infantry for the Rattan will be dealt over 60 seconds. So a whole minute, which will be 1 damage per second. Or with this, it will be 1 damage per second. There you go. So let's test it out. Let's go in game. And as you can see, I already have my Rattan Archer. They're on passive. Let's just do 1 attack. And as you can see, I believe we're in fast game speed right now, but slowly over time the damage is being dealt. Of course, there's the initial damage of 6 minus whatever armor he has, and then slowly the bleed is being applied. And that's a very long one because we set it to 60 seconds. If we go with our champion, that's for 3 seconds, so 1 hit. As you can see, a lot of damage fast. I didn't click fast enough so we can see it properly. But let's see here. There you go. Really fast. So pretty fun ability. Really easy to mod once you know how it works. And then here, same thing. Damage over time being dealt to the building that we modded. And it wasn't in the game before. So pretty nice. And finally, last thing I wanted to show, just a fun little thing, just to show how the mechanic work. The knights, the knight here, I should say, you'll see as 600 regen. Why? Because that's what we modded earlier. And as you can see, the healing over time is stacking per hit, which is the same thing for the bleed. The bleed stacks if you have mini unit that hit the same target. So it is different, unique bleed that are being applied. But here we set it to positive just for fun, and as he's being beaten on, is just regening all of his HP. Unless he get 1 shot, he'll be just invincible. So that was my small little test. The knight is not dead. Just here you go. Let's apply more bleed. That's how it is. Damage over time. And that's it. Hopefully you learned something. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.